Okay, I'm recording. You recording? Hello. Good
Yep.
day. Okay. And then we'll start the show about here in three, two, one. Good day, Bruce. Oh, hello, Bruce. How are you, Bruce? Bit crook, Bruce. Where's Bruce? He's not here, Bruce. Blimey, it's hot in here, Bruce. Hot enough to boil a monkey's bum. Strange
In
expression,
space?
Bruce. Well, Bruce, I heard the Prime Minister use it. Hot enough to boil a monkey's bum in here, Your Majesty, he said, and she smiled quietly to herself. She's a good
In
Sheila,
space.
Bruce. Hello, Bruce? If you're not familiar with that, what if that was all this show became? Is just me as an avatar in space, dressed up like an Australian, uh, by myself reenacting Monty Python skits.
It
That'd be
doesn't
pretty
look like
good.
you're facing the sun. I don't know why it's so hot.
I know. But are you familiar with the Bruce sketch?
I must have seen it, but no.
It's they're all pretending to be Australian, and the whole bit of the premise is that everyone in Australia is named Bruce, which is kind of true or used to be in the 80s whenever that first came out. I think they've branched out now a little bit into other names. They have like I don't know, standard ones like Ben and Aaron, but also a lot of Bruces. So that's a pretty. I discovered the new Zoom avatar character creator, and I wanted to be Australian. And you have chosen something for yourself. I'm not
Yeah,
quite
I'm
sure
not
what.
racist at all.
No, it isn't. It isn't. It really isn't. You're just wearing some sort of hoodie thing, which might be like a I don't know what it could be conceived of, and then the standard internet sunglasses. But listen, $70 billion. Does that ring a bell? $70 billion.
For what now?
Does that does that ring any bell?
It could be anything.
$70 billion.
Is that like missing from the Pentagon or
No, no. What about this number? $300 million. What about that number?
is that that's might be the amount of money the Canadian government wasted on their like COVID tracking app?
Good guess. $2 billion. What about that number?
I don't know.
This is the amount of money that various tech companies have been running in the deficit for. Now, I didn't actually look any of those up. I just sort of, use numbers. But to devastate the point that they're not, none of them, like have ever really been profitable. Are you familiar with this? Like YouTube, Google,
Yep.
Twitter, they've never actually you think like, oh, they're super duper um successful, but they aren't. And
Nope. They
that's a
survive
big
off
clue.
of investor money and government money and like bailouts, and they're
Right.
all just hoping to like go public or sell the company and get bought. None of them actually do anything. The only thing that actually makes money, I think, is Google Ads.
Yeah, and even that is not very much. And so you have to wonder, how do they keep going? How do they keep going? And this is crucial to understanding some things because I've been the right wing in America has a persecution complex, not entirely without reason, right? I mean, there's reasons for that, but they've gotten a little out of out of sorts. And I was reading this article by somebody I forget who they were. I'll see if I can find them, but they were talking about it was the ideas of the generations of warfare, like first generation warfare, second generation warfare, yada yada. And they were like, now we're on fifth generation warfare, which is like all completely psyops and trying to convince the publics to go in certain directions against their self interest through this and that and the other thing. And his main contention on this, I was a Substack article by John Carter, a fellow that calls himself John Carter. That's who it was, and which is and his Substack is something. Oh, I think it was political conflict in the age of psychic warfare. So he's a good Substack writer, but this whole time, like he's going on about, oh, they're censoring everyone, and they want to, you'll own nothing and be happy, and um, what are the options for dissidents and so forth and so on. And I pointed out on there something which is I feel was a lack of self reflection, like a lack of ability to step back and look at it from the outside of his perspective, which is that he's saying all this while he is on the internet. Still, he's saying we're censored. Like he's saying that you can, and they will censor any dissent and whatever, while he's writing a long article, allegedly exposing the regime's plans and criticizing it. And so I said, well, it can't be as bad as you maybe imagine, because you're here, you're presumably making money off this, you have a fair number of subscribers. So you're in public criticizing the regime, allegedly saying what their plans are, and getting money from it. And this is the thing that falls on both sides of the spectrum here, which is that leftists and rightists both have a persecution complex, and they think the government is out to get them, and yet at the same time they're like on the public TV, saying these things and getting paid and not having their bank accounts shut down, not being thrown in prison, as you would expect if it were really as totalitarian as they're up there claiming. Is this making sense? I think so.
Yes.
So, okay, so if they're there, right, and if you are, it's not my point in bringing up that the companies have never been profitable, is that the reason they haven't been profitable ever is that the mostly the CIA and other intelligence agencies presumably have floated them, and that's not like a conspiracy theory. You can find this in quote unquote mainstream news. Like here's an article I pulled up just very quickly. Google's true origin partly lies in CIA and NSA research grants for mass surveillance from courts. This is a known thing, all right? The CIA and the NSA gave money to people, early tech startups, and presumably still do, to run themselves. And even when, because Google, I got to thinking all about this week, because Gab recently, the alleged alternative to Twitter, recently went paid, in that you can still use it for free, but if you want to post images or videos, you have to have a paid subscription. And there was a big hullabaloo about it, and people called Andrew Torba a sellout, and that he was like, "Oh, I guess free speech you have to pay for now, huh? You got to pay for speech now," even though they can still get on there and they can post whatever they want, right? Um, it's just they can't do images. And they're like, well, if we can't have memes, the thing about it was they've devolved. Did you ever use Gab? You have a Gab account? I was briefly on Gab.
No, I tried it briefly and was not impressed. And then the guy running it is a crazy man.
Andrew Torber's a crazy man. He is a crazy man. I don't know if he's a bad person, but he's certainly flighty. He goes back and forth, and he's like, I don't know, he's a bit all over the map. Anywho, that site has devolved into being um everything it's people said it would be, which they were like, it's going to be full of neo Nazis and hatred and whatever. And at least the people responding to Andrew Torba's announcement on Gab were that. And they were like, oh, only the Jews will be able to afford to post memes. Only the Jews have $8 a month. It was like, what are you talking about? But that was like not an uncommon, like you saw, like, for I don't know what they were going on about. But it was so ridiculous and so stupid, and really shows that maybe those people in a polite society did deserve to be censored and kicked off regular mainstream platforms. Maybe they did. I mean, I'm against censorship as much as anybody, but these people are just gross. I don't. They're just annoying. Not even so much for just for being annoying. Like, there was a guy, and I was just reading through these because it was fascinating to see how much, because number one, everyone there complains about welfare given to people and to like minorities and so forth. You know that they hate that. And then they're up there like, well, I want a free service, and you're taking away my free speech if I can't post a meme for free all the time, which is a bit hypocritical. And then two, they just so everyone was just so melodramatic about it. This one guy's like, I'm 70 years old. First of all, you're not. No 70-year-old is on Gab. That's a lie.
I
And
don't
then
know. There's a
you
lot of
think
boomers on.
you
That's
think a
where they
lot. Oh,
go.
okay. You know what? I take that back. Maybe you're right. Maybe disaffected
Those
QAnon
right-wing
boomers.
boomers are, yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely
Okay.
on Gab.
I was thinking that they all lived a True Social, but maybe they went to Gab.
Oh,
That's true.
yeah, they're actually probably over there now.
Hmm. So he's like, I'm 70. I haven't eaten in a restaurant in 20 years. I can't. It's like, okay, there are probably cases of people that just can't. They're like at their actual bootstrap limits and they cannot afford a single cent more. Okay, sure. Most people, though, if I guarantee you, most all of their users waste more than $8 on something stupid every month. Absolutely. You know, um, there's hardly a person in America where you couldn't look at their budget down to the cent and be like, hey, there aren't a spare $8 here we could shift around. Anyway, my point being in that is that the early internet, because it was largely floated by the intelligence communities and the government, established an expectation that the internet was free. Because it is free, because the old saying went, and it's always been true, if something is free, you're the product. And the entire see the part of this John Tron's or not John Tron, John Carter, I forget, not John Tron. He's been in enough trouble. The this guy. His article was not incorrect, which is that fourth generation, fifth generation warfare, like fourth generation warfare was like color revolutions and so forth and so on, which the CIA and our governments perfected shortly after the internet became a thing. They would use the mass media and social media in particular to foment agitation in a certain population, to get them to go out into the streets and riot, to destabilize the government, to call snap elections, to then get in a person that they wanted, right? They swayed public opinion and so forth. And then he was saying, well, that worked fine up until like 2014, when it seems like Russia used the same playbook to do the annexation and to justify the annexation of Crimea with its people, and that freaked out the intelligence communities. And then they started to reverse course, and they said, maybe we've let this go too far. Our enemies now have figured out how to use our weapon, and that's why, in his theory, he's putting forward, that is why there was, after 2014, there was a pretty noticeable shift towards more censorship online, because it was no longer serving the free speech thing was no longer serving U.S. geopolitical interest. That's probably partly true. It was because, make no mistake, Google, YouTube, Twitter, all these things, they were, at least in part, a tool of U.S. imperialism. Just what it was, right? They were used to gather data on our America's own citizens, sure, but also on all the citizens of the world that were using it. Imagine that as a tool. You're the government, and you suddenly have a thing every single person in the world logs onto, and they do their searches, and you have access to all of that data, and your enemies do not. And like what they're saying. You can send them different search results to manipulate their opinions, and to make China's opinions the opinions you want, and so forth and so on, right? It's a tremendous weapon in as far as the intelligence community is concerned for. Uh, And so the reason people out there think things are free on the internet is because they have been, because they've been subsidized as basically a DARPA project, a military industrial complex project, right? That's why it's free. If something's free, you're the product. Andrew Torb is correct. He's like, I can't. This doesn't work. I don't know. He was like, this doesn't. I don't know how other social media companies do it. I guess they get money from elsewhere, but this is insanely expensive. And if we're going to continue, we have to charge money. And I mean, if you've ever ran a server farm, I mean, you're familiar with internet stuff. You know how expensive it is to run computers,
Yep.
and I mean, think about YouTube. I think about you can look up any video that has ever been posted on YouTube and have it pulled up to you in a matter of seconds. Okay, think of all that data storage, all those.
Yeah, and it's all in like 4K and stuff now too.
It's all in like 4K. Think of how much hard drive. When your computer gets filled up, at use listeners, you have to get another hard drive, external hard drive. You have to back up things. Think about where all that goes. It's massive and it's all organized and sorted and it generates so much heat and you got to cool it down. Google for a time was talking about putting their computer servers literally in like waterproof cases and dunking it in the ocean. Like they would have a thing like in the like off San Francisco Bay, they'd have a big spheres where the computers lived that were like in the ocean just to cool it off, right? They didn't actually do that because there's a lot of fears, justifiably, that they couldn't make that watertight and they would all. But it was an interesting idea because it's so expensive to run these things, and it causes so much energy usage. It is not. There's no profit being, and everyone on Gab was like, "You run ads, you get money from ads. Ads are nothing, and you're sort of a stupid person online if you think this is all being paid for by ads. You've never, and the thing is, and I guess it makes sense because most people have never tried to have any sort of internet presence or like produce. Most people are consumers of content. That's not bad. But if you're trying to produce content, you know how little ads pay. Here's an example on this show. Sometimes we use a podcast server thing, and sometimes they offer us ads. And I will almost always click, sure, do the ad. Why not? For every ad that is listened to by a download, or not every, I'm sorry, every 100, I think, down ads that are listened to from a download, I believe we get 1/3 of a cent. 1/3 of 1 cent. So so 100. So 300 people listen to it and you get a penny. Does that sound like it's paying for anything? Anybody? Does that sound like anything's paying for anything? It's not paying for nothing. And why? Because how many times do you click on ads? Almost never. No one, they're not effective. They don't work. And the idea that the ads are paying for the internet is a naive belief of people that have never tried to make money on the internet. YouTube does not make money from ads enough to cover its business model. It simply doesn't. Neither does Google. Neither did Twitter before Elon Musk bought it. And so if you want, and this is why, by the way, you can't create culture change because people out there. I'm not throwing any shade on our listeners, but there are a lot more downloads than there are paid subscribers. That's true. Hey, maybe think about it. But our people in the world, you can't affect change because you're unwilling to pay for things that are good and providing a good service and good at putting out a good message. And so those things go away. Now, our show is stuck around through sheer stubbornness, but it's not because it's financially viable, right? Um, and so if you want something to happen, you have to be willing to pay for it a little bit to keep it going. That's just basic. If you like anything that's happening, I mean, if no one donated to the church, it would go away, right? If no one donated to the March of Dimes, it would go. If you want anything to continue, you have to support it. So maybe think about that as you consider becoming a Patreon or a Gumroad subscriber. I'm just saying. Now, Gab rightfully, had to start charging things, and people were upset because they've been conditioned to think the internet is free. And as the saying goes, if you've been giving something away, good luck charging for it, because people always feel like they've been had something taken away from them, even though it was a free service that other people were providing free labor to give them. It's just human nature. But so the reason that was possible for so many years in the opening of the internet is because all of that was floated by the intelligence community. Like, it was a weapon to gather intel and to influence public opinion in foreign countries. Right. And that's part of, in my opinion, in my estimation, that's part of the push for like LGBT legislation. Because what does a colonizing force, what does an imperial force need to justify its imperialism? It needs a moral stance. And so you pick something that most people don't have that you can force on them. Right. In the past, it was like, well, they don't have Christianity, so we need to go there for rule Britannia and give it to them. And this makes it good, even though, yes, we're taking them over and enslaving them a little bit. So, but hey, we're spreading the gospel. And so it makes it okay. Right. Same thing. It's the same thing. Now we're spreading the quote unquote social gospel. And so you pick a thing that most places do not have, which is, say, gay rights. And now you can say, because they don't have it, we get to roll in with tanks. Do you see how so much of this is the military industrial complex gone mad? And so you can influence public opinion, you can create reasons for war, you can do all these things with the internet. But it doesn't actually fund itself. And all of these things, okay, Twitter, Facebook, so forth, Reddit, they all have the intelligence community at least has their fingers deep into those pies, if not outright has baked the pie, in that they've given most of the money to make it happen and overseen many of their decisions. Okay. So, with that in mind, does anyone actually believe that if the government or at least the intelligence communities did not want Elon Musk to have Twitter, that he could have purchased it? I think that's pretty self-evident. Whatever you see happening is on these platforms is not the government losing control. Okay, you have to keep that in mind. That's not happening. They're not like, oh, the base right wing is slowly making a comeback, and we've got Elon in, hooray! And now the anti-woke legislation in Florida, hooray! All right, okay. That's not to say that there aren't grassroots uprisings that can cause effect, but as I mentioned on the show before, that's very, very hard to do, and it takes a long, long time. It doesn't happen um, overnight, and it certainly doesn't change what Google's doing. Okay, so if so, that's where I wanted to start off because the Substack article and so many other right wingers are convinced the government is out to get them and to censor them and put them in jail and so forth and so on. But my point is, listen, guys, look around at what's happening. I know that for the past decade, they were kind of using you as the boogeyman, and they still are. But do you not notice the shift happening? Elon Musk is not in charge of Twitter/X now for no reason.
Well, I've got
Uh,
another example of the shift that's really good that happened recently.
go for it.
The secret Jew tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
You think that that would be suppressed, not allowed to be talked about, etc. But like even normies were talking about that.
Exactly.
Like family members were talking about it, and it was everywhere. And that you would have thought would have been shut off immediately.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's a beautiful point. If there's no accidents here, it's a screen. Okay, a screen is a stage. Everything that comes on the stage is planned. It is not an organic event. And I know a lot of you guys don't have experience in theater or whatever, but if you do, or in, like I've mentioned before, like a magic performance, everything is there for a reason. Everything is put there. And when a magician walks on stage, every single object, down to the napkin on the table, down to what his shoelaces are, has carefully been chosen to help with the illusion. And almost all of it is suspect. All of it may be hiding the trick, right? On a stage, the screen is a curated environment which provides you, it's a digital theater. And everything that comes through it is for a reason. And so if the mainstream outlets are talking about Jews with tunnels, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that at a time when Israel's being highly criticized? Why are they doing, like, you have to start asking yourself these questions. And like I've talked about before, it is a battery, and when one side is drained, politics, the public is a battery, and when one side is drained, you flip the poles to make it run the other way. You drain the left of all its energy, and that fuels up resentment and anger and like fear on the right. Then you flip the pole and you make it go the other way, and you just go back and forth, and that is how the engine runs, because all engines rely on a polarity. All motion relies on a difference in potential energy, and so you just shift it back and forth, right? And so what they're and you see this happening. We talked about this a few shows ago, but I mean, here's Twitter now being owned by Musk, and people are like, they're like, it's not, I don't know, encouraged, but definitely allowed to like say slurs and to talk about taboo subjects and so forth and so on. And people, the Jews and tunnels thing. You have the BlackRock and all those people and the Blackstone coming out and be like, hey, we think Trump's going to win. It's probably going to be okay. Look, Trump is polling. Where was this hysteria? Like in 2016, when if Trump was even slightly ahead in anything, there was mass hysteria. Trump is currently polling like 10, 12, sometimes 20 points ahead of Biden. There's no, like, where's the outrage? They're not fomenting outrage, and they're not fomenting outrage on purpose. Okay? Yes, some of it is people are just have outrage fatigue, but most of it is this is what they want to happen, which is what I've been telling you people. He's going to be president for, he was 45, 9, and he's going to be president 47. 4 plus 7 is 11. President 9/11. It is there's uh, their goals, and this is was my critique of this guy. Like, if it was really as you said, you wouldn't be allowed to be on the internet making money from this public post, right? Step back, look at your own self. You're engaged in the thing that you say is impossible. You are not censored. You're on this public social media platform earning a living from criticizing the regime and allegedly talking about its plans, right? And it's not that everything he said was wrong or out based in not reality. He was right about like how the intelligence communities have made the use the internet for warfare and so forth. He had a lot of good points, but like you have to have that self reflection. And so the if a thing is suddenly shown on the stage of the screen, it is because it wants to be. And you can tell what it is not. It is not the not milk. The screen is the Babylon is not promoting, because that stuff will either be kicked off, but much more rarely it's just there but not promoted. The algorithm just ignores it. My favorite YouTube channel, Quantum of Conscious, Matt, he started his channel in like 2008 or whatever. Really, YouTube started in 2005. He's been there for a long time. He has, I forget how many, a good many thousand subscribers that he accumulated in those first couple of years. And then the algorithm, quote unquote, Babylon decided, he got their notice, and they just shut him off. They didn't kick him off the platform. They just made it quiet. He talks about, he's like, if you have this many subscribers already, that, he's like, I get maybe 2 subscribers a month new, he's like, they just turn me down. I have to purposely seek him out, to remember to, like, oh, I wonder what Matt's up to. And then I Google, because it'll go months and never show me a recommendation of his new videos. They just, it's not that you don't, that's not what happens. They don't come knock on your door with stormtroopers. They just turn down your volume so no one can hear you. They don't promote you. Okay. And if a thing is, if the government is blasting, if the news organizations are blasting, Jews have secret tunnels in New York, they're doing that because they want the anti-Semitism to happen. You see, they didn't in the past because it wasn't useful for their goals. Now they do because their goals change based on the circumstances. They want, okay, they want to foment the hatred of the Jews, and it's happening with the left wing now. So they got it a little bit with the right wing. Now the left wing is being primed to hate the Jews over the Gaza stuff. And that doesn't mean that what happening in Gaza is I'm defending it. I'm not defending it. What I'm saying is they're allowing those narratives to fester is not like um it's not an accident. It's not something there. And remember, chosen people, chosen for what? Chosen to be the scapegoat, right? That's exactly what it was in biblically. Christ is the scapegoat for all humanity, and the Jews have played that role in a lesser in a lesser way than he did specifically, but still, like, they constantly get accused of things, and that doesn't mean they're innocent of everything. They're normal people who are as guilty of things as other normal people are, and as innocent of things as other normal people are. So not everything, the Jews have not been innocent of everything in the world all the time, but they've also not not been guilty of nearly all the things that they've been accused of, right? And and they they're setting them up for another fall, another take the blame, another you know collapse. And again, doesn't mean they didn't play any role in it, because you're always cooperative with Babylon to some degree. The degree that Babylon has a control of you is the degree to which you cooperate with it. That's true, right? But um, if they're showing, what I'm getting at is there is that it's pretty obvious if you take some steps back that the government is preparing a sort of right wing switch over. Not the government, really. Maybe intelligence. Who exactly is they? I'll use the term they, Babylon, a right wing switchover. Um, why? Probably because they're going into a war footing setting. Because like Macron was recently made very explicit statements about how maybe the EU could sidestep NATO so they don't trigger Article 5 or whatever, get a little army together and go directly into Ukraine to confront Russia pretty explicitly. And you have to remember the Babylon system doesn't exist. It just exists to create sin and death and pain. That's why it exists. And the Babylon system is not the U.S. government. The Babylon has its tentacles in the government for sure, but it's a different thing. Babylon is like a metaphysical structure. I think ultimately run by spirits, evil spirits, and human evil and sin. But its goal is to create death and destruction and pain. It's not to get rid of white people. It's not to uh, promote whatever your weird thing is that you think is happening. Um, it may do certain of those things from time to time, but it's going to go after maximum destruction. And if it can whip up the world, right, back and forth, left and right, back and back, back and back. Now we're on this side. Now we're on this side. Look at you have to love the Jews. You have to hate the Jews. Do the Russian. If it can go that back and forth and build up everyone's anger, so then it can get them all to just kill each other, and you will be the ones that do it. You see, Satan can always step back and say, "I never pulled the trigger. I never pulled the trigger." It's like that song, pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. I shouted out, "Who killed the Kennedys?" When after all, it was you and me. He's like, what did I do? I didn't shoot it. I didn't pull a trigger. And he's right in a sense. He just gets other people to do it, right? By priming the pump of this battery and telling them back and forth. And so, and what is called for now is we need a great deal of self reflection and what discernment, because you can't get caught up in these There is a secret, like so. There is no good system of government. Government, mente means mind. Govern means to rule. It's mind control. It's what it is. It's what that means. Entertainment, mind, entertain to hold the mind. It's mind control. Okay, that's what the words mean. They tell you exactly what they mean if you know the meaning of words and like their Greek and Latin roots. It is. They exist for this purpose. There is no good version, right? If you're like, hey, we need a monarchy. Okay, the king's just gonna do. Britain is a monarchy right now, right? That's the crazy thing, like tradcast and whatever. We need a religious monarch. That's the whole of the UK Commonwealth is that they're an official, biblically based monarchy, and they whose head of state is also the head of the church. Okay, and look at what they're doing. Is that what you want? There is, or if you want a dictator, hey, you want Putin? That's You want Kim Jong Un? There is no good. There's no communist capital. It doesn't. There's no good system. It's all varying ways of managing sin. There is a secret force for good in the world that combats Babylon, but it's not Donald Trump in the tunnels with Q. It's average people, you and me, raising ourselves to higher vibrations of love. Right? Being we we are the force for good, loving each other here, being better people, not falling into that sin, not falling into that hatred. That's what the good army is. It's not flashy. It's not, oh, we got to go get them. It's not, I need my Second Amendment, to and I'm pro guns, you all know that, but that's not going to save the day. Okay? That's not the weapons we're fighting here with. It is it is it is refusal to go along with evil and to choose the good instead. And you do it in your own life, you do it in the lives of your family and friends, and that is the good force, right? It's not. That's why the politics thing, you have to give it up, right? It is interesting, but it is a show. It comes to the screen, it's a show, and it's there to. It's not for your benefit while it's there, you know. And so, I just wish, because what they're gonna do, this is what's gonna happen, is they're gonna get they're right now setting up the right wing for another like colossal failure of judgment, and they're gonna. I mean, the right wing is right now cheering on Elon Musk, who wants to literally put a chip in their heads, and who funds AI research, which uses. They're using right now allegedly in Gaza to have like a computer decide where bombs should go, and they're like, "Yay, yay! This is our champion!" Like, it's so frustrating, and it is, and the left wing does it too. It's just, I'm more familiar with the right wing people, and so they're like, I don't know who on the left wing they champion about Bill Gates, I guess, and Dr. Fauci. But if you're looking for heroes, the not milk will give them to you. The head of the Freemasonry years ago said, if the people need heroes, we'll supply them, and they do that all the time. If you need someone to look up to, and the thing is, you don't have anyone to look up to. Don't. Why? Why are they better than you? How is Elon Musk's opinion better than yours? How is my opinion better than yours? How is Bill Gates's? How is Biden's? How's Trump's? Are you not also a living man or woman? Are you not also a sentient human being? Are you not also made in the image of God? You decide. Don't let other people tell you things, right? You look at it and you decide. This is why I've always resisted being trying to come off as a guru, because I don't want that to happen. Even though apparently that is the way to make a channel grow, is to be a guru. And maybe one day I will, but I'll do it heavily ironically, and just that way I won't feel bad about it. That's why they do that. Like when um they they become heavily ironic so that they feel better, because it's like, well, if the people are falling for it now, then they kind of deserve it. If I'm this over the top ridiculous guru man, they sort of just want it to happen. They want to be fleeced of their money, right? That's the thinking, and they're not entirely wrong. They're not entirely wrong. If you fall for the guy wearing the beads, sitting in a lotus position on a mat who's clearly a sex offender, and you go over and you give him his money anyway because you think then you kind of are complicit, right? That's how these things work. So I just want to take that moment to remind people the screen is a theater. Everything on stage is set up and is suspect. It's there for a reason. It's not organic life that's just happening. It's there for a reason. And do not do not think for a second that the if DARPA, if the intelligence community, if the military industrial complex thinks that it can further its goals by uniting quote unquote white people against other people and fomenting their anger, that it won't do so. Of course it's going to do so. It is really agnostic. They don't have a favorite team. If they'll agitate the black people to make their aims, they'll agitate the white people to get their aims. It doesn't matter in that respect. And so people need to really um, grow up, and that is the call. That's the call I've been making for years. Grow up out of this soup of dependency and having the victim consciousness. Like, oh, they're trying to get me. They're trying to get me. The U.S. government really is one of the only thing. Is one of the only things that it's protecting you from these from Babylon in a sense. If it was up to Facebook, if it was up to Twitter, you would have no speech at all. You would have none at all. They would censor you in your own homes. Um, the fact that you have any rights at all is really down. And if you've ever been involved in local courts and whatever, and yes, of course, not all courts are fair, and you have bad judges and so forth, and there are politicized court events and so forth and so on. But a lot of that's also made up. Like that one, Douglas McKay. Do I have his name right? Douglas. He went by Ricky Vaughn on Twitter. You remember him?
I remember Ricky Vaughn.
Yeah, Douglas.
Was
Anyway,
he
he was
the
arrested and he's in trial, or maybe he was found guilty and he's. But
was
what?
he
What?
the one who did the text to vote thing?
Yeah, yeah. So the right wing narrative is that he's being prosecuted for posting memes, and he did post memes, but that's not why he's being prosecuted. He was trying in personal, like direct message chat groups, to organize creation of memes to disseminate to uh, Democrats, mostly black people, black women, to tell them that they could mail their votes in to this other place that would have not accepted votes, right? So it would have been wasting their vote. So he was trying to do this as a coordinated campaign with other people. And so he was actually trying to engage in voter suppression. Now, have people on the left done that or similar and gotten away with it? Probably, right? Nonetheless, like this idea that he did nothing illegal is not true. Same, and so a lot of the courts are more fair than a lot of people have been led to believe. Yes, there's political persecution sometimes. Yes, but on the whole, um, it is not as bad as people have been led to imagine. And so don't like you can't self-identify. The U.S. government, like judges, the courts, police, or representatives, for sure, there's a lot of corruption, for sure, but they are not nearly as bad as they're sometimes painted online, especially on a more local level. um, and in many cases, they are that is your legal challenges is your right, your only really effective defense against what some of these DARPA surveillance intelligence community things online are trying to do. So don't self-identify Babylon with the U.S. completely. The Babylon certainly has a vested interest in the U.S. government for sure, but it's not it's not a one-to-one thing. And so if they're like, hey, you got to join Russia to help save America, don't do that. don't sign up to fight against your country by, don't, because they're trying to confuse you all the time. And I see people like sign up, like, don't just don't be an idiot. Okay. Remember that there is this force for good, but it is not dramatic. There is a force for good in the world, and it is effective at fighting back Babylon. It is actually stronger than Babylon if it chooses to be so. But it is a very unassuming force that doesn't have a lot of glory behind it, which is where you just treat people in your life correctly, and you love them, and you love your family, and you love your kids, and you love your friends, and you do the right thing. That is the force for good, right? You don't get a medal for that, and you don't get people clapping for you and painting murals of you or whatever, which is why people don't want to do it. They want to do the big things that make them seem like a hero or whatever. But it's like Tolkien said, the ultimate in the Lord of the Rings, the thing that fights back the darkness was ordinary people making good ordinary decisions, and that's what we have to. That's what we have to do. So that is my spiel against not being from as a space Australian about not falling into the left or right trap, falling into the like, hey, they're trying to get me. Reject victim consciousness, reject all of that. Don't hate the Jews and don't hate the Palestinians. Choose not to hate. If they set up a binary of like, who do you want to hate? Choose
Hate
neither.
everyone.
Yes. Hmm?
Hate everyone.
Oh, hate. I thought you said, hey, everyone. Yeah. No, no. I thought you said, hey, everyone, like you had a statement. No. Choose
No, no,
neither.
hate everyone.
No, no, no. Don't choose neither. Choose to love everyone. They'll try to set you up like, well, which team do you want to hate? Choose neither. I choose to hate
Or
no
both.
one. I choose to hate no one, and that is the right path. So, yes. In other news, oh, a great one. This sort of tags along with it. Did you see that Elon Musk is suing OpenAI?
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he doing that?
Well, it's a very vague thing, but the crux of it is, this is brilliant. We should do this. Apparently, OpenAI began as a nonprofit company taking donations. Basically, it's sort of like a charity. I don't know if that's exactly right because charity has a very legal definition, but definitely a nonprofit that accepted donations for the development of their technology because they said, oh, it's going to be, it's a technology for good to go out into the world and do good things and just yada yada yada. And then, and I just give them applause for this chutzpah. This I mean, it's great. As soon as they developed their technology to where it was like good, they instantly converted into a for-profit company. So, and like made deals with Microsoft for hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's the American spirit, man. If you aren't starting a thing as a nonprofit and then parlaying that into but that is probably illegal. Elon Musk is correct about that, and again, that's not to say that all the Not Milk's minions don't sometimes do good things. Like there is a good benefit to X opening up and allowing more speech. Doesn't mean it's there's good mixed with bad and bad mixed with good. Wheat grow with tares, but he is up there challenging them in court, like, hey, don't weren't you supposed to be a nonprofit? And now they're like, well, but who else does that is hospitals. Hospitals do that all the time, and it's never made any sense. They get away with it. Like, oh, we're a nonprofit, and they like a few years down the line, they go, oh, we're going profit. Like after you
Why
took all
does
that money from
Elon
people,
Musk care?
what now?
Why does Elon Musk care about OpenAI doing this?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Um, it's the narrative he's setting up is that OpenAI is not being true to their core principles of like using AI for good and for the public, and is actually using AI for evil. I
Well, he's
imagine it has
guilty,
to do. I
probably.
imagine. I imagine it has to do with setting up some sort of government regulation of AI to then make, what they want ultimately is certified real, where
Yeah.
you know, images, you can't tell truth from falsehood. You can't tell. So they want to have like a thing with like a stamp on it, like this is certified real on the internet, and that controls people's minds so hard. Like, well, it doesn't have the certified real stamp. It all comes back to, are you offloading your authority as a spiritual being onto others? And if you want to, they're going to serve that up for you. And so my thing is, don't do that. But so that is, um, that's pretty good. That's what he's doing. Before we talk about ghosts, how do you feel about surge pricing at Wendy's?
What pricing?
Surge pricing at Wendy's.
Like the Wendy's prices are too high?
No, so are Wendy's big in Canada?
They're fairly big, but I haven't been to a Wendy's since I was a kid, probably.
Yeah, until I was like maybe 17, the only fast food I'd ever been to was a McDonald's. Um, because the town I grew up in was very small, and the only fast food we had was a McDonald's, and that was it. That was the only one for like ever. And then at some point, a Captain D's opened, and then there started a floodgate of other ones to come in. But um, yeah, there was like my house and like 10 miles to school, and in that 10 miles there were some cows, some corn, some cotton fields, a McDonald's, and maybe and a John Deere tractor store, and a farmer's co-op, and that was it. And so I didn't have that for a long time. But no, the Wendy's, the store, the fast food has introduced. They said they're gonna, and I learned about this because my wife is she's a good soul. But she can get a little passionate about things, and to she's decided to join on with corporate activism or anti-corporate activism. And she told me this morning or the other day, she's like, we're boycotting Wendy's. I said, oh. She said, yeah, we're boycotting Wendy's. I said, why? They're doing surge pricing. And I said, oh, I read about that. And that's where they're basically taking the stock market model, which is they have their computers now, which are predicting and telling them based on current trends when how in demand their burgers are in this exact moment. Like how many people are in the line, how many people are likely to come in the next 5 minutes, and the prices of the food is going to go up or down throughout the day, like a stock market, depending on demand. Right. So like if there's a
Kind of
lot of people
cool.
in the queue, huh?
That's kind of cool.
That's what I told. I said that means sometimes
I
it's
don't think I
cheaper.
have a problem with that.
I know that's what
Yeah,
I said. Sometimes that means sometimes it's cheaper. And she was like, it's
it's
not.
supply and demand.
Yeah, it is supply and demand. And I said, and I told her, I said that's what most things are. If that's just, they take the demand and they see how much they can get for it. People are incensed about it because I think it makes it too impersonal, because it's like down to like, is my food going to be a stock market item now? I get that. I mean, I get that you don't want, it's like, is the price of everything we buy going to be micro trend every second? It's going to be fluctuating, but that seems annoying. Do we want everything to follow the stock market trend? I get that. And I told her, okay, fine, but I said, I'll stand with you in solidarity here. And I won't go to Wendy's, which wasn't a big thing for me because I don't go to Wendy's anyway. But I was like, I'm not gonna go to it even harder. I won't go to it even more. Um, and but I said, but you're gonna lose this battle. Like this is a battle you've already lost. Whatever, because it's gonna be so much more profitable for them to do that, to be able to charge more when there's not as much interest. That whatever online activism, and I think she got this off TikTok, is happening is going to be a drop in the pan. And then what is going to happen, what they always do is they say, oh, they issue an apology. They say, oh, we were wrong. And then everyone jumps off their back. And they say, we won. And then they just do it again 3 months later without a press release. and then the energy for that protest has already vanished. Everyone's on to the next thing. And they go. And the companies know this. Companies are not afraid at all of boycotts because they just have to win once to get the new policy in there. You have to win every single time. You have to protest every time they want to do it, and it has to be successful every time. They just have to get it to go through once and get people to get used to it, and that's it. And so it reminded me, I was like, I said, this reminds me of when gamers were trying to boycott in-app purchases in mobile games and in like regular video games. And they said, we don't want this, we don't want pay for play, pay to win, where people can pay to get better armor or pay to get better equipment or boosts, and I got that too. I mean, that makes sense. You want it to be fair, but also they totally lost. That was a complete loss on the battle of the consumers. And you're just not going to win. You're not going to win. That was my point. So I was like, I'll do it. I won't go to Wendy's, and I never go to Wendy's anyway, but I won't go more. But also, I want you to recognize this is a losing battle, and maybe that's okay. Sometimes it's okay to fight losing battles, but people are very insistent. But that's the future. Computers are going to enable us as as our computing power gets more and more integrated, the Internet of Things and so on. I mean, I don't see why everything at every store wouldn't have its price changing all the time. You have a little bitty screen beneath everything, every item, and it just is constantly fluctuating on what its price is. Milk is right now it's like $5.10, but if people rush in there and supplies start getting low, it goes up to 8. You know?
That already kind of happens just on a slower scale. It's just supply
Yeah,
and demand.
yeah, it does already happen. This is, and I get there's an argument that is too fast paced for people to handle, maybe, and like that is inhuman, and I can see that. Um, but also it's going to happen. Like you're not going to win that battle. It's that's I appreciate the fight, but it's not. Americans do not have a good track record of winning against corporations. They just they just do not have a good track record of success. And again, the only thing that has ever pushed them back has been like lawsuits of the U.S. government. So the U.S. government is not always your enemy. They do good things sometimes. Um, So yeah, I think they're mad at that. My wife wasn't too much on the other ones, but they're apparently also mad at Kellogg's for some reason. I don't know why. TikTok gets mad about weird things. Um, people on TikTok, their favorite thing is to find some company pursuing profits and then be like, "Can you believe what they're doing in pursuit of profits?" And it's like, "Yeah, I can't. That's what companies do. They're not moral entities. They are intrinsically immoral, or at the very least amoral." And I'm I welcome to Earth, I guess. I don't know. That's just how they do. Uh, you know, um, I looked into that a little bit. I wasn't able to make sense of it. Apparently, Kellogg changed its name to Kellanova and didn't tell anybody. It's still on the boxes like Kellogg's, but like their legal name is now like Kellanova or something, which is weird. It doesn't um
They probably
sound.
changed it for like accounting or legal reasons or
Yeah, they
something.
always. This is the thing when we talk about like your real name, your all caps name, when on the lawfare shows. These people know this, and they change it. And when you change names, you offload a lot of like liabilities. Yeah, Kellanova, formerly known as Kellogg's. That's a terrible name though, Kellanova. Ugh. I mean, I guess Kellogg wasn't good either, but I was used to it. But Kellanova is really, uh, huh. Apparently, it was originally called Battle Creek Toasted Corn. That's an even worse name. That's
That's
okay.
pretty bad.
Yeah, Kellanova is the second worst name of the Kellogg Company. You should have stayed with Kellogg. Um, but yeah, that's what they are.
TikTok sounds exhausting.
Yeah, it is exhausting. It is exhausting, and people getting out. I mean, I guess I guess people want to think that they can affect change in the world and that they aren't helpless. And you aren't helpless, as I've mentioned. In but that's not the arena in which you're not helpless. In the arena of global commerce, you're not going to have a lot of ability to affect. change. And because people are gonna be like, I'm boycotting Wendy's, but then it's like, it'll be like 2 in the morning, I'll be like, but a Frosty. And it's cheaper now. That's what they're gonna say. It's cheaper because it's 2 in the morning, and they go, and they're gonna go get it. And then, that's I should have been in marketing. I love marketing. I'm not good at it though, is the thing, because I don't like being deceitful, but I just great how they do that. Like some recent examples, I got Domino's pizza the other day, and on their box they have environmentally friendly. That doesn't mean anything, right? Illegally, but you can put it on the box. They're not environmentally friendly in the least, but you just put environmentally friendly. Like, what does that mean? And it makes people think, oh, they're environmentally friendly because it's like a clever pun, but it's just something they put on the box because it sounded
Yep.
funny. That's great. I love that stuff. I love the chutzpah of just tricking people to that degree is something I really appreciate. And oh, I just wish I could do that. I wish I had the mind to sit on there and go, you know what? What if you put environmentally first? And everyone around the table goes, genius. We don't have to change a thing. We don't have to be any more green at all. Just put in and we don't. There's no legal ramifications to that word because we just made it up. Brilliant. It's brilliant. I salute to whoever does that. They're brilliant wordsmiths. Anyway, that's all I had. You wanted to talk about something though. What did you want to talk about?
I read your Substack on angels, demons, and ghosts. So I
Mm-hmm.
want you to red pill me on ghosts because I've never believed in ghosts for pretty much my whole life.
Okay. Okay.
But trying to have an open mind, and
Mm-hmm.
it does seem that like King Saul did talk to the ghost of Solomon, of Samuel.
Yes.
So it seems like ghosts do exist, and it might be possible to talk to them. But like, yeah, red pill me on this.
All right. On ghosts. So, it follows pretty well. Okay. So there's a non-Christian and a Christian perspective. So if you believe that people have souls that are immortal, then it stands to reason that when the body dies, the soul is not dead because it's immortal by definition. Okay. So if that's true, then the only question is, can they hang around Earth? That's the only question.
Yeah, I guess
Um,
that's more of a question. Yeah, because I would agree that souls are eternal. I
right.
just always figured that you die, the soul either goes to be with Christ, or I guess you go to Sheol or something and wait for the judgment.
Yeah. And that appears to be, the basics of what happens. It just doesn't seem to happen instantaneously in all cases. Well, first of all, so heaven and hell, like I like how Thomas Aquinas used to lay it out. It is a continuum of being, right? And Earth, where we are, this is where Middle Earth comes from, by the way, is the middle ground between those two polar extremes. And so it is not like it's not like it's a different geographical place, like it is. They are overlaid on top of each other. Um, just like to use the frequency example again, on the radio, right? You can pick up all kinds of. No one uses the radio anymore, but you know the example. Uh, in the same occupying the same physical space, there are all manner of different frequencies, high frequencies and low frequencies, and you can tune into whichever one you want. And so this analogy was not available to Aquinas, but his what he says is somewhat similar if you think it through. Um, that they are heaven and hell are basically here with us now, but they are at different states of being, different frequencies, different wavelengths. And so, like, geographically, say someone could be standing in Minnesota and they're just on Earth. Someone else could be standing in Minnesota and be basically in hell, like, in their spiritual state. And someone else could be standing in Minnesota and be in heaven and be in a state of bliss, be connected to God, and so forth and so on. And the same is true when your body dies and your spirit is just here. Geographically, you can be in any location, um, but that doesn't affect your distance to God, because it's not like a geometry distance. It's like a frequency distance. And so an angel can be standing in Bethlehem, or in Jerusalem, or wherever, talking to Mary and telling her that she's going to have a baby, and he's still in heaven, right? He's on earth, he's visible, but he's still like, he hasn't fallen out of heaven. In the same way, a demon can be running around earth and still be in hell, because it's not a geographical location. It's not a question of geometry. It's not a question of physical distance. It's a question of like, it's a musical question. Like, are you at a high note or are you at a low note? Are you at a high vibration or are you low vibration? It's like a dimensional thing. And so the spirits of human beings, which are have just died, appear, and this is what I was talking about in the Substack. There's a one of the things skeptics point out is they go, hey, ghosts why are all these ghosts, like, why are there not any ghosts from caveman times? Why are there not any ghosts from you know the 1100s? Why are they all like Victorian people, or people they're just died? What's with that? The answer to that is very simple, in that there appears to be a if you just look at people's anecdotal reports about their experiences with the ghosts and so forth, that for the vast majority of people, they die and then their soul falls into a higher or a lower state, and they are no longer, quote unquote, with us. Not in a geographical sense, but on a vibrational sense. But some people take a little bit more time to make that transition. And maybe that's because they're confused. You hear a lot about this, like people die suddenly and they don't know how to process it. Like it's not as common for a haunting to occur. If this is why hauntings are always have traditionally been associated with traumatic or violent deaths more often than not. Someone that dies alone, and someone that dies surrounded by their family in bed after a prolonged decline in illness, very unlikely to produce a haunting, just based on data we have from anecdotal people. Like, you very seldom get those people haunting you for a long period of time. They've come to terms with the idea, they've adjusted to it, and then when it happens, physical death, they're ready to pay. When someone is violently killed or suddenly killed or passes in a manner they weren't expecting, adjusting their frequency can still be here. They can still be attached here. And this is what they talk about, moving on, or still being, having lingering. They don't know what to do as much, and so those people can hang around for a longer time. In practice, it appears like almost all hauntings, if you just talk to people and like what they think this goes, almost all. So first of all, a lot of hauntings, quote unquote, are actually, in my opinion, demonic activity,
Yeah,
but not
that's what
all
I've
of them.
always thought too.
Yeah, but not all of them, because not all of them are. Some of them are produce positive results, and so you have
And
to,
those, yeah, so I would have said like before, I've always believed that it's either demonic activity or it's like you're self-hypnosing yourself
right,
into thinking that like you saw a loved one or something.
right. And that definitely does happen, and definitely a lot of, in my opinion, quote unquote, hauntings is demonic activity in disguise. I think that's true. I don't think that all of that's true, because some of it has very beneficial effects on the people that are experiencing it. Like they for example, I knew a lady when I was younger. She went to church with us, and the Southern Baptists were not okay with this, but her brother died. And then in the days that followed, he, according to her, appeared to her in her room and talked to her for a minute and then left. Uh, what was meant by left was not clear. I assume he just disappeared. And it was the standard line of like, hey, I had some trouble, but I just wanted you to know I'm leaving now, and I know that you're very upset. And that created a great deal of comfort and peace in her, in a way that I don't think a demonic interaction would. Now, could that be a hallucination? Sure. But it happens often enough to where you think, maybe there's something real happening here. And additionally, sometimes there's like physical evidence, like, people do, like, as much as people say, like, oh, we have cameras everywhere, why aren't the photos? There are photos of ghosts. You just think they're all fake. And that's a lot of them are, but some of them aren't, right? And so we have evidence of this sort of stuff happening. Um, and so what appears to happen is that most people do pass on almost relatively, like within the first couple of minutes of death. Some linger longer, days. In fact, most hauntings, most ghostly activity occurs within the few days of a person's death. And then it appears that they move away. Like if the ghost of a loved one will appear sometimes to family members that are far away or whatever, and they just kind of a say goodbye sort of thing, and they go away. So most, like I would say, it's hard data is impossible, but I would guess about 9 out of 10 hauntings are from someone that died within the past 2 or 3 days, and then it just stops. And then there's a long tail of that going out for a while where people hang around longer, and that is usually involves very traumatic cases and people with a lot of confusion. And there's and that has been accounted for in various ways in various religions. In Christianity, it's been accounted for as a kind of purgatory. In Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy has talked about it in a different way, like the ladder of ascent and so forth. But like there's something holding them back from going fully to the beyond, to heaven or whatever, and they have to work that out for a while. And so um I think that's one explanation. Another one is, so you got that. There's also the stone tape theory, which I'm a big fan of. I think that is also true. The stone tape theory is that the environment, uh, like if you have a record, like an old record player, it records literally, physically, the frequencies of the music in grooves on the thing, and then as the needle passes over them, it's able to replicate that music. And in a sense, all of reality is when I'm speaking in my room now to you, my voice is impacting the walls and the window and the chair. And in theory, it is in some sense absorbing all of that information. And the only reason we can't play it back is we have no means of like figuring out how to extract it. And so some particularly very heavily emotional psychical events um, appear to in that way get recorded in the environment, like a tape made out of stone, like a recording media, like which is why.
Right.
What now?
Well, I was gonna say if you've ever read the book The Holographic Universe, they
Yeah,
talk about this sort of thing, which again, like I've also kind of thought that like really intense event occurred, which is why you do seem to see like ghost activity in a battlefield or something. It's not that
right.
it's actual ghosts, it's more the traumatic events that occurred there are sort of looped over and over and over in that location.
Yeah, yeah. And there is, if you map out places that people say are, so if you take places that are like widely said to be um haunted, just like places that people would like know about, and you overlay it with like geological maps, you do find that a lot of quote unquote spooky places are in places with a lot of granite or a lot of quartz or a lot of limestone. Like there may be environmental factors that enable this recording process to happen. And then on some level, maybe psychical, maybe just in our subconscious, we're able to pick back up on it and it's replayed. And this is the difference between an intelligent and a non-intelligent haunting. So an intelligent haunting is like their actual soul is still here, their consciousness. A non-intelligent haunting is like some part of their spirit or their behavior is there and it just plays on repeat. Like a classic example is the story of like a haunting of a lighthouse or something where someone has committed suicide. And then like every night for the next 50 years, or not every night, but some nights when the moon is about the same as it was that night, people may see an apparition of the same girl walking off the edge. And it's just replaying it on loop. And it's like this traumatic event, this heavily emotional event, this very spiritually powerful event is imprinted on the landscape. And when the conditions are right, it replays itself in a way that some people are able to pick up on. And so that's a non-intelligent haunting. If you try to interact with that sort of spirit, it's not actually there for you to interact with it. It can't like hear you. It doesn't. It ignores you completely. It's not actually. It's just like a phenomenon more than an intelligence. And then there's
Yeah, it's not
intelligent
like an
haunting.
actual ghost.
Correct. But then there does seem to be intelligent hauntings, which are, like I said, people that have difficulty moving on. And a lot of it is solved once you get out of your head that heaven and hell are different places, like geographically, and more that they are vibrational states. That is, it's like, oh, then you can see how they are all sort of overlaid on one place, just like radio stations are all overlaid on each other without any interference. You know, a demon and an angel can exist side by side in the same geographical place, and indeed they often do. That's how they tempt people. But they don't without one being in heaven and the other being in hell at the same time. That's why the devil in Job can say, "Where have you been?" I've been on the earth, roaming back and forth upon it. You're like, how's the devil on earth? Shouldn't he be in hell? It's like, well, hell's a state of being. It's a frequency state rather than like geographical
Well,
state.
hell is also like a difficult concept because there's the lake of fire, the abyss that Satan and his angels and everything won't be thrown into until the very, very final judgment.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's demons in there right now.
Well, there's a difference between Hades and hell and paradise and heaven. If you want to get
Right.
technical about like how it's played out in the Bible, and that's very confusing, and it's not quite clear. But there's like paradise, um, like Christ says to the thief on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And then after, and then it sort of appears, and then again, people are going to get mad at me because I'm probably getting this wrong, and it's very complicated. But after the resurrection, the general resurrection of all things, then there's like new heaven and they're like overlaid on earth. Heaven is like on earth. It's very confusing. Um, but and just in the same way, there's like Hades and there's like hell, and like hell is like the lake of fire, and like the one is thrown into the other at the end of time.
Yeah.
So very confusing. But yeah, did that make you feel any better about ghosts? Or have you tried ghost hunting?
I've been to places that are supposedly haunted and nothing.
Nothing.
This is kind of disappointing.
Where did you try to
So
go?
I don't know.
I don't think Canadians leave behind ghosts. That could be your problem. The Canadians don't have souls. So if you've been
I
trying to
went
do it in
to
Canada,
I went to a haunted prison once. The ruins of like this prison, some monastery ruins, stuff like that. And it was just like, well, there's nothing here. It's some ruins. Interesting.
yeah,
If I was there at the night, like I might have heard an animal or something. Because I think I agree with you on the traumatic events being replayed on a loop and stuff like that.
hmm
It's more so, I don't know if an actual soul can stick around and choose to visit people. Maybe,
yeah,
I guess, but I don't know how the logistics of that would work. And
yeah.
I
I mean,
still think a large amount of it is actual just demons faking stuff or people who are just seeing what they want to see.
yeah, and I get that. There's a lot of that definitely is like a. It's difficult to explain how it could be possible, depending on your what you think about like how the last things work, like how what happens to you exactly when you die, and so forth and so on. Um,
And that's stuff we can't really understand with our
right
limited human beings. And we're
now, I
dealing with,
I had
with
an
what?
example. I have an example of a stone tape one. At least I think it's a stone tape. Either that or animals have more of a soul than we give them credit for, which could also be possible. But we had a dog we used to keep in the garage because um, the garage was cool. She was mostly an outdoor dog, but it would get hot, and so she would stay in the garage with a fan, or in the winter when it was cold, she'd stay in there with a furnace. And when it would be time for her, we had these concrete steps going up from the garage to the house. and they were slightly uneven, so that when you put weight on one side, it would go boom, boom, like a little wobble. And then when you took your weight off, it would fall back down, go boom, boom, boom. And so every evening, when it was about time for her supper, she would get anxious and she'd come to the door and wait because she knew we'd be bringing it out soon. So she would come to the garage door and you'd hear her go boom, boom on the thing. And you'd hear her wait on that because it was fairly like noisy if the house was quiet. And say, oh, she wants her dinner. And then we'd go, fix it for her. Then she would die. She would die. Like she did it more than once. She died. She was a good dog, but she got old and she died. And after that, not once, I would say 3 times, and one time with me, my mother, sister, and someone else there. I don't remember. We're sitting in the living room. About dinner time, we hear bump bump. She's dead, right? She's been gone. And we all just looked at each other, like, what was that? And we go, of course, nothing is there when we go out to look. And so that may have been an example of a stone tape theory thing happening. It was literally on a piece of stone, like a concrete stone. Or I don't know, maybe animals have more of a soul than we give them credit for. Maybe I've thought, there was this prevailing theme in C.S. Lewis, which is that animals, the more they interacted with humans, became more human and developed deeper souls. He talks about that a lot in Paralandria. But so maybe if he believed that we gave them souls through their interaction with us, basically, which is an interesting idea. So who knows? Maybe beloved pets do have more of a chance of being ghosts because we impart spirit to them. I don't know. But that is an example of maybe a stone tape one, or perhaps a irrational. Another one that I have is my wife's grandmother. We had, and this is years after she's been gone, and I was present at her bedside as she was dying, and that was very interesting because she was clearly having what some people would describe as her brain is shutting down. That they would say that would be the standard medical explanation. Her brain is shutting down. She's having hallucinations and so on. I sat there watching her die, and she was legit, just like you hear about, having conversations with people that I couldn't see, who she was calling by names of people that were long dead, like her son who died before her mother, her brother. She looked at me at one point and she just sort of furrowed her brows and said, "Are you in water?" Like she was looking through at me from some. And part of that is probably the brain shutting down, like, and whatever. But also, like, that's I don't buy that. Just like I don't buy that dreams are random. Like dreams aren't random. Static on a television screen or on a radio station is random. Like that's like when hallucinations, quote unquote, aren't random, and they're being produced in a coherent way. And so you think about how complex the brain is to produce. If it's malfunctioning, it shouldn't be producing coherent images and coherent sayings. It should be producing just the blah, 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 like someone having a stroke. That's an example of a brain shutting down to me. Seeing things and talking to things and like hearing, like, that's not a random degradation behavior, right? Like a machine, a TV breaking doesn't produce new channels that aren't normally broadcast, right? It just stops working. So that's always been a little suspect to me. But she would, um, and I wasn't. I left the room for her to be alone with her children, my wife's mother, and so forth, and her sisters, when she was actually, about to die. But I was there within the last couple of hours, and that was very interesting to see her do that. And then some years later, we were going through some old things and we were talking about, throwing away some stuff and putting things in the attic. And we put one of her heirlooms that she'd given. It was a little music box, but it was kind of broken. And we were like, I don't know. I mean, who's going to want this thing, right? Like, it's nice that she left us that, but like, we have other things to remember her by and we never use it. And, you know, our kids never knew her. They're not going to have emotional attachment to it. So maybe we should just get rid of this, and we have this other nicer stuff of hers that we will keep. So we put it in the box of like stuff to go away. And weirdest thing, it hadn't happened before, it hadn't happened since, but we were downstairs that evening having dinner, and that music box came on upstairs. And I was freaked upstairs, like by itself in the closet in a box. It hadn't happened before or since. And we went up there and I picked it up and it was there, it was playing, and then it stopped. And I was like, well, I guess she doesn't want us to get rid of it. So we didn't get rid of it. Because I wasn't gonna throw it out after that for sure. But so I don't know, stuff like that happens. If you want to go find the most quote unquote haunted place, although I don't recommend it because I don't believe it's actually, I think it's actually demons at this place. Is the Waverly Sanatorium in America is probably the most haunted. That's the most likely. If you want to go with the highest guarantee of experiencing a spiritual thing, the Waverly Sanatorium is one of the most ones that like has public tours that you can go to. Um, but yeah, I think that I think I agree with you most of the time. A lot of ghost stuff is either hallucinations or of demonic origin, but some of it, I don't think all of it is. And I think that they can pass back and forth a little more than we might expect.
So your music box story, if that's like a true event thing, then like it's always something really small and weird like that. Like
Yeah,
if I'm dead and my soul is in heaven and all this, and I'm in the afterlife and have access to like I don't even know what amazing things I could be experiencing. Like, why would I come back and play around with a little music box one time?
yeah, I don't know. It's a very similar question to why aliens, quote unquote, aliens abduct who they abduct. Like and like they're always messing around with the farmers in a field or whatnot. That's a really good question. I've thought about that. Like, why wouldn't they just show up directly? Why wouldn't they just? I think my best explanation for that, as far as spirits go, is that for there to be true, like, so if let's say this world has an element of free choice in it, and like free, you get to choose who you are, like what path you're going to take. If you had 100% evidence that God was real, 100% proof, and all powerful, your choice to follow him would be under coercion because you'd be like, well, I better, or he's going to get me. Like, I don't want to be on his bad side. And so perhaps to enable free choice, God has a being that is all powerful has to step back, and you can't have full knowledge of him until your life is lived and you've made that choice. Because otherwise, like it would be impossible for you to make a quote unquote free choice for good or evil if you had 100% proof that the consequences of choosing evil would be backed by omnipotent power and like there was no getting out of it, right? So I think a similar thing might apply to spirits in that like there's always in the paranormal there's always an element of plausible deniability. It's always like, well, you could like something could have happened to make that go off. I don't know what, but something could have. Or like, maybe I didn't see it, or like maybe it was a lens flare. There always has to be an element of plausible deniability so that if you don't want to have that in your worldview, if you want to reject spirit totally, you have an avenue to do so. I think that's my opinion on why that they don't interact directly with you, and why they really only like you ever really only hear of like angels interacting directly with like people that are already saints. Like they've already like God's already like he's already joined my team. I'm good about him. I'm not influencing him one way or another. He's already made his decision. And so like these prophets in the Old Testament are like very holy people, like whatever. They angels may come to them directly, and like show up because it's not gonna their choice has already been made. Um, but for most people, I think that the element of plausible deniability has to be there to enable our choices to remain free, and so that it's actually a real choice. Like you didn't know for certainty who's going to win this battle of good and evil, and so you chose what you chose, in a genuine manner. Like you thought what you picked the side you thought was right. Um, and that is the best I've been able to come up with for why they don't these spirits like if God gives ghosts like spirits of dead humans the ability to come back and interact with humanity, he does so in a very limited way, and maybe that's why. And so maybe I don't mean, it's sort of a corny thing to think about, but maybe my wife's grandmother was up in it. She's like, I wanted to keep that. It really means a lot to me. And she's like, can I go do something? It's like, yeah, you can go. Don't show up to them, but just, go and, maybe something like that. I mean, it sounds a little corny, but um, I think there has to be an element of like plausible. If you don't want to believe, you don't have to. If I show up with a gun and I point it in your face, everyone there believes in the gun and in me. Uh, and so it takes the element of free choice out of it. And so you have to, I think God has to be a way for free choice to exist with an omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipowerful being. You have to kind of not have proof of it for free choice to exist, because otherwise it's coercive and you don't get free choice. And I think that is why that happens. Um, and so that's my theory. I don't know. I don't have it. I'm not claiming it's correct.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. So that's how I think ghosts work. And like I've talked about on the show, I've had those paranormal experiences. I encountered a haunted statue in Savannah, Georgia, which was interesting. It wouldn't let me take its picture. I tried taking its picture with a phone. Now this was a flip phone back in the flip phone days, so the camera was not great, but I could take a picture. I could remove the statue from the field of view and take a picture. That would be fine. And I could do it in the left and the right, but if I pointed it at the statue, it would go file error. And it never seemed to happen before. I tried it many, many times, and I did get two or three to snap off. So I did get a few pictures of the statue, but almost most of them, it was like, and the guy was there. It was, he was like, that statue won't let you take its picture. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's the most insane thing ever. But he was right. Now, was he a charlatan that had installed some EMF disruptor to maybe? But then it doesn't seem like it would be that sophisticated where if I moved the camera slightly off center so the statue wasn't in view anymore, it would stop working. That seems like some sort of EMF blocker thing. It wouldn't be that sophisticated. I don't know, but there's those. There are, if you go looking, and a lot of people have not found ghosts because they haven't gone and looked. It sounds like you've gone and looked and haven't found any, and that's also fine. But maybe try. I don't know. I go back and forth on telling people about ghost hunting because I guess in theory it is a kind of necromancy, which is you know probably not good. Where you're trying to commune with the dead, and I guess technically ghost hunting would be a form of like maybe. So I'm always like, I don't know if I should tell people to do that, uh, but if you are interested in trying to find it out, if that stuff's real, that is a good way to do it. I'm not going to tell you whether it's good or bad for you to do, but that is a good way to go about seeing it. I don't know.
Right, but if you end up going ghost hunting, it sounds like you're either going to see the stone tape sort of recording kind of deal or demonic activity. You're not going to actually encounter any real
Yeah,
demons.
yes, because I think if they're an actual human spirit, they're going to be attracted to places and people that they knew in life. They're not going to come to some rando. I guess maybe they might be, in theory, you might encounter the long tail of residual hauntings where a person has hung around for a house for a long time, but I think that's super rare. I think you're much more likely to encounter demonic activity when you go into these places than you are actual ghosts. I think your likelihood of encountering a ghost is most often going to be when, unfortunately, someone close to you passes on or is in the process of passing on. I think that is when you're most likely to encounter such a thing. And so you're right. Maybe ghost hunting in itself is not the best method because you're probably going to find demons. Now, that said, if you want some confirmation that the spirit world exists, Finding demons is a good way to do so. I don't recommend you go find demons. That's up to the user. Your mileage may vary. Um, but demons are findable. So maybe, do with that what you will.
And demons also seem to be bound to specific locations too.
Correct. Yeah, demons have there's a lot of limitations on what demons are able to do. Um being a demon is not the sexy thing Hollywood makes it out to be. Where you're like a having sex in the underworld with hot people. It's very sad. It's very decayed and degraded, and it's not a fun experience. I don't recommend people join demons. It's bad for you. But yeah, anything else we got to talk about today? We talked about the right left battery and don't fall for the screen and the theater and how the government is the Babylon is all is that you have to have self discernment and how the CIA ran Google and YouTube and the Musk uh, AI lawsuit and surge pricing at Wendy's and ghosts and demons. Anything else we need to go over?
I had some questions for you too about frequencies.
Hit me.
Hey, you. Okay, so the algorithm, for whatever reason, served me up a bunch of frequency videos the other week.
Okay.
And
You mean like
like
440 hertz healing videos, that sort of stuff?
exactly, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
how beekeepers are supposedly have the longest lifespan of any profession because the bees, the sound they make is at some kind of frequency and it is super healthy for you or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, you're a physics expert. So when
In
when they
in
talk
in
about
in quotes,
in
in
theory,
quotes. Yeah,
in theory. So when they talk about these frequencies, they're specifically talking about sound frequencies, right?
correct.
So hypothetically then, if you have like I think bees, their frequency they give off is like 233 hertz or something. So
Hmm.
that's just basically a sound wave where the wave hits 233 times in a second, right?
Hmm.
So you
Right.
could
The peak, the peak, or you can measure it with the peak or trough or the middle, whatever. It recurs 233 cycles per second. Right.
right. So you could basically make yourself a machine that sends out that exact sound frequency and get the same health benefits, right?
If sound frequency does have health benefits that way, then yes, it would seem that you
So
could do that, and people have tried.
right. So then here's kind of what I'm wondering then is how easy is it, I guess, to get that exact frequency? Because you'll see people who are like, oh, I'm playing this healing 430 thing, whatever, to charge my crystal from like an iPad speaker. But would like the speakers alter the frequency? Would you need some kind of like $2,000 speaker to get the perfect frequency? And if you had like a $10 speaker, would it be a different frequency?
I mean, yes, your amplification system and your projection system is always going to affect your the purity of your output. Digitally a wave may be one thing, but it's going to come out a little distorted no matter what you do when you convert it to analog.
So yeah, so basically then anybody listening to those YouTube healing frequencies for 8 hours thing is they're not getting the actual frequency out of their little computer speakers, right?
No, but I don't know how accurate you have to be. Like if you're at 230.2, does it not help you? I don't know. I don't know. This biofrequency thing is a very
Okay.
hypothetical thing. But you
Right.
could calibrate your speakers. Like what you could do, and this would be, this might be a thing for computer people to maybe on our show even to do, is that you could have maybe it could be a website where you would play. We're gonna send 440 hertz out of your computer speakers. Okay, go. And then you could have another set of speakers that would listen and see what actually came through. And then you could play with like, well, so I have to send the speaker 430.3 for it to actually come out 430 or whatever, 440. And so you could calibrate
You got
and
to
like
calibrate it.
you could make it work. You can take the distortion into account to produce what you want, you know. Um, but it's keeping that in mind. There's like when we talk of frequency, you can't just think of it solely in terms of like sound. Light has frequency, of course. Um, and that's what the different colors of the spectrum are. That's what radio waves,
Right.
X-rays, light, colors, gamma rays. It's all the same thing. It's all a photon, just a different frequency.
But when they're
Ultraviolet.
talking about this like healing new age stuff, it's always sound specifically, right?
Well, it is because that's what they can do on YouTube videos. The only thing they can
Oh,
put out is YouTube. Right? Like the only thing, if you have a set healing thing, the only thing that the um well, not the only thing. I guess you could do it through the screen as well, but you can't make you, it's very difficult to make their screen put out a frequency of light specifically. I mean, you can do it in a range, right? If you make the screen red, it's going to be in that frequency range. But so if they want to make a YouTube video, the most easy thing to do is sound. But there's light frequency, there's sound frequency, there's spatial frequency as well, which a lot of people are not aware of. Spatial frequency is a bit harder to wrap your head around, but um, well, if you like, you look like a conch shell or something or a seashell. You see that repeating pattern, and that is an example of spatial frequency. And you can measure it. You can measure it in terms of like inverse meters or whatever, and you can convert that into. You can do all the things on spatial frequency that you can do to regular frequency, like convert it to wavelength and use K-space on it and do Fourier analysis and all that stuff, and you can convert it into images and all that good stuff. That you can do. Spatial frequency is also real. So there's frequencies in more ways than people are readily aware of. And Tesla was right in that everything is like vibration and frequency. Um, and in fact, the if the room you're sitting in is at a frequency right now, it's just at a very low frequency, right? It's like a frequency that to you is almost static. Um, but it's at a very, um, so I think the whole what you're seeing is an artifact of like, well, the only thing they really have available to you them is YouTube. If you want to do full frequency healing, you would make a room that would be spatially encoded. It would probably look a lot like a cathedral or a classical temple, if we're honest, because a lot of that has the appropriate spatial frequencies. It would have light filtering in at healing frequencies through like stained glass or whatever. It would have like, and that's cathedrals, used to be trying to do that in a way. They would have the music that was chanted. They would have you be in a spatially frequency environment that was healing, and you
yeah,
would
it's
have
a big part of
light.
the whole Tartaria thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so there's something to that. I'm not. We've had guests on before this show that have been like, you can heal anything with a tuning fork, and hey, go for it. I don't know about that, but sure. The but there is reality does seem to be made up primarily of frequencies. The question is how much is the external world's frequencies do we imprint and repeat? Because that's the crux of it. If I can be around bees and my body can absorb their vibrations and vibrate with them, and that's a good vibration for the human body to vibrate, and then that would make sense. But I'm not sure that my body, just by being around the buzzing of bees, is taking up that frequency that's healing. Maybe it is. Like there is legitimate scientific research on like people that keep bees seem to live a little bit longer, but that could be other factors. But I don't
Yeah,
discount it. I'm not a crystal magician. That's the crystal, like the crystal magic stuff people is based on like these crystals are of certain spatial frequencies, and there's nothing that people do is based on total falsehood. There's probably some truth to it. So, um, yeah.
but yes, like one of the videos I saw was some doctor who was showing that they hit leukemia cells with a specific frequency and then they just fell apart.
Oh
So
yeah,
my
that's probably
biggest
certainly
thing,
true.
yeah, so my biggest thing I'm wondering is could you just build a machine and make frequencies that aren't even audible, but that have healing benefits and just play that where you're in your house all day or something or while you sleep?
You probably could, and people have attempted to do that. In fact, there have been whole I think the Soviets had a similar technology where they claimed to be able to heal all sorts of illnesses with this, putting people in a room and you would play these things, these different vibrational frequencies that would like this frequency, whatever leukemia cells can't tolerate and they fall apart or whatever. And that kind of stuff is real, in that we do that clinically all the time. Like there's ultrasound ablation where you go in and you like basically you fire use an ultrasound thing at a very high frequency to break apart things inside the body, basically by hitting them with sound at an extreme frequency, and they vibrate to the point they break apart. And you have to come in different angles. The difficulty with all that, of course, is like at least in Western medicine at the moment, is that we only know how to use sound to break things apart. And how do you do that and only target the cells that you want to die and not the ones around them? That's always been the challenge.
Oh,
Um,
I guess if you had a bunch of other cells in that sample with the leukemia cells, you might blast them apart too.
right, exactly. And so like there there is probably a frequency because the leukemia cell would be different that it vibrates at that the ordinary cells do, but it's probably pretty slight and you'd have to really narrow it down and have to deliver it because see once the sound is passing through your body, okay, well now the sound's passing through your body and each tissue layer it's encountering it's changing, it's being attenuated, it's wavelength is changing because of scattering, all these things. It's very difficult to do it in the body at any depth beyond the surface level and make sure and get your frequency just right and just at the place you want. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely healing frequencies. I think there's healing music. I think that a lot of the music that is pumped out by Babylon, rap music, country music, it's not just a black white, it's not just a black person thing. A lot of country music is the same thing. It's like, you know, it's very repetitive beats. It's very like
They say too,
monotonous.
like they changed the frequency of the music too, and if you listen to old classical music, it's apparently a different frequency than whatever pop music they're playing now.
Yeah, so that's a whole nother show. That's equal temperament versus oh, what is it called? If you hadn't brought it up, I could have versus true. Oh, what is the other one called? Just intonation. Just intonation. And it is you equal temperament um is a tuning. So there's just intervals, and that saying that's what it's called. Just like is injustice, like true intervals between the notes. And then there's equal temperament, which tries to approximate just intervals. How do you say into steps such that the ratios of frequencies of different notes of adjacent notes is the same. So like the ratio from C1 to C2 to C3 is the same. Um, and the ratio from D1 to D2 and D3 is the same. And that's been used. It's been used in the reason they did that is a very practical reason. It is to basically with the piano. Um, when the piano came along, you have a large range of notes that people can play. Like you can go all the way across the octave on the keyboard. And if you use just intervals, um, which is there, it's been a while since I've been over. Just intervals is just intonation is whole number ratios between the frequencies, like 3 to 2 or whatever. And that's different than which is equal temperament is like it becomes fractional. And so just intonation, a lot of people, when you hear music played in just intonation, um, it sounds better. People think it sounds better. And they think that a lot of people claim it sounds more healing, and they think that it produces a greater level of like peace and sincerity and serenity in them. And I think that's probably true in my estimation. Although I think a lot of that, as you have brought up, gets if you're listening to it through crappy computer speakers, I don't know that you're actually getting it. I think that's mostly psychosomatic because it's probably being drastically like compromised. If you have really good high fidelity speakers though, or you're listening to it live, this is probably a thing. But if you want to play across multiple keys, if you want to like be swapping keys and playing different and do some crazy things with music as Western music has traditionally wanted to do, it, just intonation is really impractical for that. Um, and that's why equal temperament was invented. I don't think it was invented as a Masonic trick to make people sick. I do. I mean, there's something to that where like they put out music that is bass and low and like repetitive and definitely has bad messages like, hey, go shoot the cops, or be a whore, or don't get an education because we're a country, whatever. I think that's definitely true, that is music can be a psychological weapon, and not just the lyrics but actually the form of it. Like if you play classical music in a subway station, crime goes down. It just is repulsive to crime. It's just like it's the beauty takes over. But there is a very practical reason for equal temperament to be used. And there's other esoteric tunings that you can do that are neither. And maybe some people would like that. Um, but yeah, I think there's something to it. But when you factor in, as you said, it's coming through the computers, and it's like, you're probably not on the frequency you think you are, and so forth and so on. Um, but that is it's all that to say, maybe invest in some good speakers if you care about healing vibrations.
But basically, I'm not going to be able to just play frequencies and make myself like crazy healthy, a superhuman.
I'm not gonna say you're not, but I think you should try. I think that you should
Right.
look. Do you remember? Oh, who was it? We had a guest on the show a while back. Good guy. I don't think he runs his show anymore, but he had a show, and he talked about his whole life started changing when he just changed his music up. He said, I used to listen to like, just sort of generic
Cradle of
pop.
Filth.
What now?
Cradle of Filth.
No, different guy. But he was like, I used to listen to like, rap music or general pop music or whatever. He said I would put on like I would start listening to chants or like music with just a positive message, and it like really like it turned his life around because it like just gave him a better outlook on the days. Like I listen to Christian music or whatever. And so I think that sort of stuff is real. And the music that you listen to is definitely important. Um, I just, I encourage experimentation with it. I do. I think that people should, this is a thing, the classic thing people should try for themselves. They should put in like get you a music room, sit in it, meditate in it, pray in it for 30 minutes a day with this background music playing. See how you feel. Change it up. If you change the frequency, do you feel better? Do you feel worse? I think there's something to it, but I doubt that we've got it nailed in yet to where we actually know. But it's open. It's an open question.
Okay,
That's my thing. That's where I am. I love
that
your
makes sense.
sunglasses.
Thank you.
Very, very good. Well, everyone, it's been lovely. This has been another episode of the Mystical American Patriot Society, soon to be called just Soul, I think. And everything's going to be better. Pay for what you like, because things actually aren't free. That is literally a DARPA psyop, right? If you want things to continue, if you want this show to stay, if you want the message of goodness to proliferate throughout the world, pay for what you like, donate a little bit, um, you know, and if you want Gab, pay for Gab. If you think it's the free speech alternative, if you want this show, pay for the show. You're not asking a lot, People, no one's getting rich off this thing. So just try it, and don't choose love, not hate. If they offer you two choices to hate, choose neither. Shalom, everybody. Shalom.